World War II, half-tracks hauled guns and infantry. Here is how 6 major powers used key designs in battle. Sd.Kfz 10 was a small half-track used to tow light anti-tank and anti-aircraft guns. Fast and nimble, it pulled 37 mm pack guns and flak pieces across bad roads and muddy fields. Sd.Kfz 11 was a 3-ton half-track that usually worked with 105 mm field howitzers. It carried gun crews and ammunition as well as towing the piece and became a common sight in German artillery units. Sd.Kfz 250 was a compact armored half-track used by reconnaissance and command elements. With thin armor and an open top, it usually carried machine guns, radios, and scouts, serving as a mobile observation post near the panzer spearheads. Sd.Kfz 251 was the main German armored personnel carrier and came in many versions. The basic model carried a squad with machine guns, while variants added mortars, flamethrowers, or anti-tank guns for mechanized infantry. Sd.Kfz 7 was an 8-ton half-track famous for towing the 8.8 centimeter flak gun. With a strong engine and wide tracks, it hauled heavy guns through mud, snow, and sand, often carrying crews and ammunition. German half-tracks hauled elite troops and big guns. Next, America answered with simpler, mass-produced carriers and gun trucks. The M2 half-track car was a shorter vehicle with fewer troop seats used for scouting and as a gun tow. It served in North Africa and early European campaigns and stayed useful for towing light guns and hauling gear. The M3 half-track became the standard American armored personnel carrier, able to carry a rifle squad with machine gun support. It saw service from North Africa through Italy and Northwest Europe, and through lend-lease, it also appeared in Allied armies that needed protected troop transport. M5 and M9 half-tracks were built mainly for export, with slightly thicker armor and different construction. British, Commonwealth, and Soviet units used them as troop carriers and command vehicles, showing how American industry supplied mobility far beyond the United States Army itself. The M375 mm gun motor carriage mounted a 75 mm gun on an M3 half-track. Used in North Africa and Italy as a quick response tank destroyer and assault gun, it gave American and Allied forces mobile firepower before fully tracked tank destroyers spread. The M16 multiple gun motor carriage carried a powered turret with 4.50 caliber machine guns. It shielded columns and airfields from low-flying aircraft, and later in Europe, crews also used it against infantry and soft vehicles when heavy, close-range firepower was needed. Moving on, Soviet forces mixed homegrown trucks with lend-lease carriers and gun platforms. ZIS-42 was a half-track conversion of the ZIS-5 truck, adding track units to the rear for traction. Built in modest numbers, it towed guns and sledges over snow and mud, filling a gap where ordinary wheeled trucks tended to bog down. GAZI-60 and GAZI-65 were truck-based half-tracks created by fitting bolt-on track assemblies. They worked as artillery tractors and support vehicles in some units, but their limited production and complexity kept them from becoming the main backbone of Red Army transport. Thousands of American M3 half-tracks arrived through lend-lease programs. Soviet guards and mechanized formations used them as personnel carriers, command posts, and gun tractors, gaining more protected mobility than local factories could easily provide in the middle of a brutal war. M5 and M9 half-tracks also reached the Soviet Union and often worked beside M3s. They hauled infantry, engineers, and support weapons during late war offensives, helping Soviet troops keep pace with tanks as they advanced along better roads toward Central Europe. The Su-57 was the Soviet name for the American T-48 57mm gun motor carriage. It mounted a 57mm anti-tank gun on a half-track chassis, serving as a light tank destroyer and fire support vehicle in units equipped with lend-lease hardware. If you are enjoying this hardware tour, subscribe for more calm, deep dives into World War II machines today. Up next, British forces leaned on Allied carriers for empire-wide mobility. The M5 half-track reached Britain in large numbers. It carried infantry sections, engineers, and signals teams in North Africa, Italy, and Northwest Europe, giving motor battalions a mix of trucks and armored carriers when they needed to move quickly, under at least some protection. The M9 half-track shared many parts with the M5, but used a different internal layout. It often served as a carrier and command vehicle, with extra radio sets and storage space for maps and equipment, making it useful for headquarters and artillery observation teams. The M14 multiple-gun motor carriage was an anti-aircraft half-track with twin .50 caliber machine guns in a turret. British and Commonwealth units used it to guard convoys and airfields from low-level air attack and occasionally to rake soft ground targets with heavy fire. Some British and Commonwealth formations also fielded the quad .50 caliber M16. Its thick curtain of fire was valued for air defense in vulnerable sectors and for suppressing infantry in open country, especially late in the campaigns in Italy and Northwest Europe. British troops sometimes turned captured German half-tracks, such as Sd.Kfz, 251 carriers, to their own use. These vehicles were usually kept for local transport, trials, or intelligence work rather than full reissue, but they showed respect for the basic German half-track layout. While Britain relied on imports, Italy experimented with its own semi-singolati and later took on German hand-me-downs. The Autocarro Semi-Singolato Breda 61 was an Italian-designed 8-ton half-track intended as an artillery tractor, similar in role to the German Sd.Kfz 7. Only a small batch was produced before the 1943 armistice, and many later served with German units in Italy. Plans existed to mount the powerful 90/53 anti-aircraft gun on the Breda 61 half-track, creating a mobile anti-tank and flak platform. Very few of these self-propelled guns were finished, but the idea mirrored German efforts to place heavy guns on half-track frames. The Italian Army also operated German-supplied Sd.Kfz, 7 heavy half-tracks as prime movers. These vehicles towed heavy artillery and flak pieces in North Africa and later in Italy, proving valuable when Italian trucks struggled with the weight or terrain. Lighter German half-tracks, including Sd.Kfz 10 and 11, appeared in Italian service through cooperation and deliveries. They hauled anti-tank guns, ammunition, and supplies for frontline units, filling gaps while Italian semi-singolato projects were still limited in scale and reliability. After Italy changed sides, German forces seized surviving Italian half-tracks, including Breda 61 vehicles. They used them as artillery tractors and support machines in Italy and the Balkans, squeezing as much work as possible from the small Italian production runs. Next on our list, Japan developed a few of its own, mainly as prime movers and infantry carriers. Type 98 Kohai was a Japanese half-track prime mover designed to tow artillery and heavy loads. With a truck-like front and tracked rear units, it handled rough roads and soft ground better than simple wheeled trucks during campaigns in China and other Asian theaters. Using the same basic chassis, Japanese forces mounted 20mm anti-aircraft guns on open-backed half-tracks. These vehicles provided mobile air defense for columns, depots, and airfields, although production numbers remained modest compared to German or American anti-aircraft half-tracks. Type 1 Hoha was Japan's closest equivalent to the German Sd.Kfz 251, a boxy armored half-track for infantry transport. It could carry troops under light armor and saw service mainly in China and late-war defensive roles, though overall production stayed limited. Type 1 Hoki was a fully tracked carrier rather than a true half-track, but it often filled a similar job. It moved infantry and heavy weapons where roads were poor, showing how Japanese designers combined wheeled, half-tracked, and tracked transport concepts to support their armies. In some occupied regions, Japanese units pressed captured vehicles, including occasional half-tracks, into service. These machines handled transport, internal security, and engineering tasks, even though spare parts and unfamiliar mechanics turned maintenance into a constant challenge for their crews. From gun tractors to armored carriers, half-tracks kept armies moving. Which of these workhorses would you pick?